The Bad Batch, Season 2, Episode 14, Tipping Point. Let's just go ahead and forget last week ever happened. Didn't happen. I'll never see it again anyway, so it doesn't exist in my mind. Let's just go into this one from 2 weeks ago, and it works perfectly. Tipping Point is a much better episode. They kind of have to at this point, because literally if they don't, the season will just fall apart at this point, because they have 3 episodes left counting tonight. So they have to do stuff. They have to, which is why I'm surprised they had a filler last week. Anyways, Tipping Point is a much better episode, but we do have to pick up from last week as well. So we start off with this very ominous, spooky planet facility with the Empire, and we're transporting a bunch of clones with the new stormtroopers and a few clone commandos who still work with the Empire. And we finally see Hauser again from season 1, where he was on the Ryloth arc with Hera and all that stuff. He was, one of the first ones in the show, besides the Bad Batch, to turn against the Empire and, show himself that he's like, what are we doing? And he, laid down his weapon. He tried to talk to the soldiers and his men, and he got a few of them to turn. And so we finally see him again, and it's basically him being transported to probably Mount Tantis, where like Crosshair has been put and all these other clones have been put. That's essentially probably where they're being sent to. So we see them on this transport ship. They're being transported off with this, it actually looks kind of cool, this Imperial transport ship with the random new commander, and they are intercepted by Echo and Gregor. Gregor is also back. I don't think he's been in season 2 so far, so he is back with Echo and then a few other clones as well. And it's basically like this little group of clones that are getting together, and it's growing and growing with, even Rex and all of them, and they're starting to fight up against the Empire. It's like a clone rebellion in a way. So it's really cool to see. So essentially they take control of the Imperial ship. They malfunction their weapons and their hyperdrive, and they get on the ship. They take out the commander. Actually, the commander kills himself with like a tooth thing that they do a lot lately. So he does that. No information from him, but they get some information from the ship, and they want to find out where that ship is going, because they want to find out where these clones are being brought, because these clones, that's the big story here, is like what is going on in this place that they don't really know about yet, and all this cloning stuff that they're starting to find out about. And that's kind of the big plan here with Echo and his little band of clones. So we get some really cool shots. This is probably one of my favorite cinematic shots, I suppose you could say, in the episode, as one of the cutscenes. I think this vibe and this this look here just looks really cool. You got a much darker feel to the Mount Tantis place than we saw at the end of season 1, where it looks all sunny and blue. This time it's very cloudy, dark and gray, ominous, and I think it looks really cool. The animation always looks great in this show. Then we get the Crosshair. So Crosshair is back. We're jumping back into his story, so at least we only got 1 week gap instead of 4 episode gap. Back to Crosshair, and we're going to jump right back into it next episode as well, because next week is the 2-part finale. So Crosshair's storyline, they basically, what the story here with Crosshair is, this scientist guy, I still don't remember his name, but he wants to find Omega, because he wants Omega to be she's important to Nala Se, and Nala Se is, she cares for Omega, so he wants to get Omega and convince her to work for him and do all this cloning, deeds, whatever he wants to do with cloning. That's kind of the plan that I've built together. There's probably some bigger, darker plan overall that we just haven't learned yet, but that's kind of the gist of the story that we've gotten so far. So he wants to find Omega in Clone Force 99, and he thinks that Crosshair can help find them. So Crosshair doesn't really know exactly where they are, but he's still gonna go and talk to Crosshair, interrogate him, strap him down, and try to get anything he can from Crosshair. And then if Crosshair can give them something, he will set Crosshair free. He will give him his freedom. I doubt that will ever happen. Even, let's just say in a perfect universe here where this guy gets all the information he needs from Crosshair, he would never let him go. It's the Empire. We all know this by now. But that's just his proposal that he gives Crosshair. So Crosshair is in interrogation right now because they want to find Omega. Then we cut to this scene, and I almost thought we were about to see the freaking Martez sisters again. It looks like their same little place on Coruscant. I think it's their workshop. Not a fan of them. I think we'll probably see them at some point. They were working with Rex, but I don't want to see them again. But anyways, we don't see them, but we do see their little hideout. It looks like their place where the clones are kind of hiding out. You got Senator Chuchi back, so she is kind of like working with the clones in a way in this little rebellion of theirs. She's trying to find out what the Empire is actually doing to the clones, and Hauser's there. He's telling her what he's experienced and how they're being transported and whatnot, and she's continuing to help the clones, and I think that's really cool. So essentially, we get to see a little bit of their base. I think we'll cut back there at some point, maybe even see Rex, but we actually see Echo leave. He's going to go find the Bad Batch because he needs their help. He needs help from Tech specifically too, because he has this information from this Imperial ship that he needs help, decrypting, because they didn't get all of it, but they got some of it, and he needs help with it. So before we get to that though, Crosshair manages to escape. Of course, we're going to get this type of story here. This lady that's like interrogating him and whatnot, she kind of seems... It's kind of like the story of like, oh, the doctor doesn't really want to do this. They're kind of nice, but kind of not nice. They're working for this evil empire. So he kills the troopers in the room, and then he stuns her, takes her key card, gets to the facility, and essentially sends a quick message to the Bad Batch themselves. And it's like Plan 88 or something. I don't remember what it was called, but it was a plan to essentially alert the Bad Batch that they are being monitored and they are, being searched. They're being looked for now, so the Empire is desperately after them, and that's essentially the message that Crosshair was trying to get across. And before there was this gas that went through the room, Crosshair was trying to tell them that they're after Omega. So I think Crosshair's back. He's back, against the Empire in some way now. He's not friendly with the Empire no more. That's good. I hope he can make it back to his brothers, but we will see. But they do knock out Crosshair with this toxin in the room, so he's still not free of the Empire, but he did get a message out to his crew, and hopefully they can figure it out. So, of course, we do have to pick back up from last episode, unfortunately, because this is where they were last. So they are hanging out on this stupid island. I think we'll be seeing the last of it real soon, hopefully. But essentially, Echo arrives there and tells them about what he has been doing and this information that he wants them to decrypt. They go over that information, and then we cut to this scene of the Doctor. I still don't know his name, and he is talking with Grand Moff Tarkin. And Tarkin has been a big player in season 1 of the Bad Batch, and he kind of shows up when needed, and I kind of like that he's like the big looming figure for the Empire in this show. I don't think we need to get much bigger. We've already seen Palpatine himself within the Senate, but in terms of the cloning story, I think Tarkin fits really well. He's a very significant Imperial figure, and I just think he fits well with the story. So it's cool to see him again, and I'm sure we probably could see him again in the next episode, considering it is the finale of season 2. But it is good to see him, and they're essentially just talking about the importance of this Doctor's mission, and he's looking forward to seeing him talking at the next summit or whatnot. Something we'll probably see in the next episode or 2. But it's cool to see Tarkin again. I always like seeing Tarkin. And then we jump back to the Bad Batch themselves with Hunter and Echo. And Hunter's kind of like, is it really worth what you're doing? Because, the Empire is so massive and so big, like, this fight really isn't worth it. You're never going to defeat them. And Echo's very, very clear that he's like doing this for his brothers. He wants to save the clones and all that stuff. I don't think he's really fighting the Empire itself. He wants to save the clones. He wants to help the clones. So that's kind of his mission. And Hunter just doesn't seem like he thinks it's worth it. He thinks it's like a losing fight. And he's not really in the mentality yet that he wants to fight the Empire head on yet. Once Tech is finally able to decrypt the information and go over the information, they learn that this cruiser was going to some scientific facility, and they're not aware. I don't think they're aware of where it is yet, but we know it is the Tantis place where Crosshair is. And they also learn that Crosshair is one of the prisoners that was brought to this place because Tech was able to see Crosshair's CT number, so now he knows Crosshair was there. And while he does mention that Crosshair sent them a message. It was the Plan 88 thing that they had, and it was essentially to alert the Bad Batch that they are being targeted now. They are the Empire's after them, essentially, or anybody's after them. That was their plan there, apparently. So they now know that Crosshair has warned them. They're wondering if they can even trust Crosshair and his information, because obviously the last time they saw Crosshair, he left them behind and he stayed with the Empire and he's been after them in a way. So trusting Crosshair is kind of hard for them, and I'm thinking we're gonna get them reunited next episode in some way, hopefully. But yeah, now they are aware of all this scientific stuff. They are aware of the doctor too. They were able to get some information on this doctor guy that's kind of becoming a new villain threat in the show, kind of replacing Rampart, who just kind of vanished because he got arrested after his failed cloning stuff. And now we're moving into this big cloning story, and I think it's quite fascinating. The last scene of the episode, another really dark scene. It's like the third time we're in this room now with Crosshair. He's strapped down again. They got him. He never could escape. He got knocked out, and now this doctor is once again reiterating that the only way you can get out of here is by my help. I'm the only one who can get you out of this facility. Now you need to tell me where they are, where the Bad Batch are, and where you can find this kid. And you can tell Crosshair no longer wishes to help the Empire. He's not going to tell them where she is. Even if he knew, I don't think he would. But he doesn't know where they are, so I don't know where that whole thing's going to go. But he did contact them, so I don't know what's going to happen with Crosshair. Hopefully the Bad Batch can maybe get in, rescue him, or he can rescue himself again. I don't know, but we'll see where that story goes next week in the 2-part finale of the Bad Batch Season 2. But that's it for this episode. So we have 2 episodes next week. That is the big finale for Season 2, and the finales are usually going to actually have the story in it. Last season it did as well, at least. It kind of wrapped up the story they were doing last season. They'll do it this week, this next week too. So no more filler, I would assume. But God, Season 2, before we even get to that finale, I just got to say, man, Season 2 was kind of a rough ride. Last week was probably the worst episode of the show I've seen so far. And it's super weird because Mando and this show have been completely random. It's so disorganized, and you go from like such a strange filler nonsense episode of last week that just is the most irrelevant piece of entertainment ever made. And then you go to this, it's like, okay, it matters to the story. And it's like, I don't know what they're trying to do. They're literally trying to fill this season of 16 episodes when they should just shorten it up, tell the story they need to tell, and move on. That's all they need to do. So I'm glad we moved into the story again in this episode. I'm assuming we will again next week with the 2-part finale, and hopefully we just get on to a much larger story that we can just kind of fade away from these filler episodes of the show, because it's frustrating to watch week to week, getting these like basically pretty short episodes, and getting, especially this season, we had like 4 in a row. 4 filler episodes in a row that almost didn't matter at all. Like it's frustrating, but at least when the story is there, it is pretty good. And I think this week the Bad Batch, I don't know if I like the Mando episode more or the Bad Batch, but they were both really solid episodes this week for both of those shows, and Bad Batch is really delivering here in some of these last episodes despite last week. If you just kind of ignore last week, there's some good stuff here in these last few episodes. That Crosshair one, like 2-3 weeks ago, was good, and now this one's pretty solid as well. So I'm expecting some pretty good episodes next week for the Bad Batch. Obviously we'll still get Mando for the next 4 weeks, and yeah, so I'm just gonna say I'm liking the Star Wars we're getting right now that I have all basically of last year, so that is a good thing. And Bad Batch, despite its faults, it's still giving me some Star Wars I'm liking a lot more than I have lately, and I guess that's a good thing. But I do like the clone story, and I'm excited to see where it goes.